Hi there. Welcome to part 2 of Leonardo Drew, Art as Physical Transformation. If you haven't listened to it yet, make sure to go back and listen to part 1. You don't want to miss it.
All I know is that I don't take the shortcuts, meaning found objects. I have friends who work with things like found objects, like Neri Ward works with that. He's a close friend of mine. And it makes powerful work. But I need to become the weather in order to sort of make these things become what they become. So this is store-bought material that has to be transformed. So I have to align myself with how things are made naturally, and understanding, even cosmically, how things, where we are in all this, it becomes a philosophy. Mm. Once you've sort of, committed to this journey. And it can be a lot of bloodletting in this journey. I mean, it's like it's pain. There's pain now, literally, and it's like wow. It's like it's like I could have had a V8.
There's a lot of bloodletting in this process.
Yes,
that's a. I mean, you spoke before about the wear and tear that he's put on his body. He's spoken about that a lot in different interviews as well. But you don't get those types of results without some bloodletting, no. Without some pain and a lot of process. These transformations do not happen quickly or easily.
Well, and he's, I love the term that I've heard a lot of interviewers use, or critics, that he's an artist who's weather. Mm-hmm. Right. So everything's weathered, but he is the weather. He is planning these things. Obviously there's weather involved, but he's not just grabbing something by chance. He's purposely putting it in the sun, purposely baking it, purposely. Yep. And look at I just want to read off some of his materials. And I don't have this in the notes, but I do have it. Wood, scrap metal, cotton, paper, mud, rust, oxidation, non-organic rust, cast paper, things that will behave like paper, glass used with the crushed paper, sand, porcelain, aluminum, buffalo fur, torn comics, like things like there's so many things ingrained too. And that's something too, until you stand in front of the work, you may not even realize that there's this many things in some of those pieces too. And I mean, I don't know, the more and more I dig, the more and more I'm just like astounded. By so many things wrapped up within his work.
As somebody who has been experimenting with rusting and aging metal over the last year and a half here, I can tell you it's not a simple or easy process. It involves a lot of materials that may or may not shorten your lifespan if you don't do it
right.
If you don't
wear a good mask.
Yeah,
and this is something with you as well that I really love. This correspondedness between the two of you is. He's using new materials and making them look old. And so a lot of people ask, like, why are you using new materials? Why aren't you just using things that are already old? Right. And this is something that is a little bit of a difference between you two as well, which I love about artists who are using things that are found or supposed to look found. His reason is he wants to go through the rigor of touch and manipulating and creating the history of each piece now. Right. Rather than going, oh, these pieces had history, and so now I want to put them in my work because of the story they're being told and being discarded. For me, that's such a great analogy of the difference, but beauty wrapped up in similar ideas within art. Like that's just, I don't know. I had to bring that up because to me, it's just so freaking cool.
I was talking to this friend that we have in common about this. There's a continuum of process and material. On the one end, you have found objects that completely honors and displays what it once was. And then you have, and Drew would be on this end of the spectrum, taking almost everything from its raw, original state and doing everything, himself. And there's space in between. But I was thinking about this, like, while I do have a lot of found, materials, most of what I'm using has been sourced from industrial sources. It definitely looks like the thing that it was before. And I'm somewhere in between, but I'm probably closer to this end of the spectrum where I realized this maybe a couple of years ago, where I would use something that I found to be absolutely perfect and beautiful in its own right, but I can't resist. It's a compulsion. I feel like I have to do something to it, to change it in a material way, to get down to its essence. And I want to honor what it was before, but I don't want it to be at all obvious what it was before.
Yeah.
And that's but it's just interesting. There's no right or wrong way, but it is a challenge when one finds something that could literally go from the stream or the dumpster and right onto a piece.
Yeah.
I'm not capable of just having it be that found object. But it's a fascinating thing to consider. It's like, what if, I'm going to stop babbling and share another quote that actually relates to this better than I could communicate it anyway. I'm going to shut up.
No matter what materials you're going to be working with, it still has to go through this channel of you, and you are stamping it. Once you find your voice, that's it. So the material is of no consequence, absolutely of no consequence.
I just got done babbling for a while before that, so you go ahead and take first pass at this one.
Yeah, he's talking about the search.
Yeah.
Right? He's talking about the hunt. He's talking about us being explorers and being discoverers and going out and doing everything we can in this channel where we're feeling led, right? And you think of a channel, it's something you kind of fall into and it takes you somewhere, right? In a lane. So you're doing all these things, you're stamping it, you're trying, you're playing, you're experimenting. We talk about this all the time. And then once you find your voice, that's it. I found it. Now I'm running, right? Now I'm going. And he's like, now the material doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because you're just able to go. And there's great quotes about, if you're always working, you're leaving room for genius to enter in the back door.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's from Art and Fear. I think that's Ted Orland and David Bayless that say that. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure. But it really is. It's like you're going, no matter what materials you have, no matter what you have in your studio or what you can afford, what you can buy, you're doing everything you can with it. And then you're going to get into this channel where you're trying, experimenting, playing, then you hit it, your voice. And then you're just going to run with it.
It just occurred to me, there's a very direct through line between what he's saying here and what Amy Sillman talks about when she describes the vocabulary that we're all looking for from our Amy Sillman episode.
Yes.
Maybe you know the date of. I do not. But she talks about, and that this is one of those things that has stuck with me since I heard it, but it's that we're developing vocabulary. And the commonality here between what he's saying and how she describes that is when we think about, verbal communication, we're not thinking about, is this a noun? Is this a verb? Is this an ad? We have the language available and it just flows because we know what the words mean. And for people like you and us, sometimes, occasionally we string them together in an coherent manner.
Sometimes.
But you're not, occasionally, once in a while, but we're not thinking about so back to Leonardo Drew, we're not thinking about the material. We're not thinking, it just becomes all a part of our vocabulary. And much like language, much like speaking, the way that I think about material and clearly the way that he thinks about material, and one of the great lessons that I've learned from listening to him speak is that the more vocabulary, i.e. material, that we can gather, the better we're going to be able to communicate, right? The more words we're going to have at our disposal to properly communicate, whatever it is that's flowing through us. I just love that.
What I love, Nathan, about Leonardo is this constant exploration of materials that fits into his voice, right? So he's spent all this time like leading himself down this channel of, I know where my voice is and where this fits and where this is going. And he's always willing to add something new to that, which means he is that artist who is perceptive and open and constantly gathering and listening to what may be coming his way. And I think there's a really great moment with him explaining this to somebody.
I think that you realize life not just through your eyes, but through your pores also. I mean, your body takes in things. So all the things that I've gathered over the years that I've been on this planet, like if you're a receiver of information, if you imagine yourself as an antenna, it's like all this stuff has traveled through me, goes through me, and it has to come out.
When I heard that, I was thinking, okay, either he has spent a lot of time with Rick Rubin, or Rick Rubin has spent a lot of time with Leonardo Drew, or they both have spent a lot of time listening to each other over the years, right? Because, this isn't a brand new thought either. No, so they could not even know each other. And it's just it's a pretty, through time, this idea has been kind of pushed around through the creative industries. But I want to read a little bit from Rick Rubin's creative way on that. And he says, we are all antenna for creative thought. Some transmissions come on strong and others are more faint. If your antenna isn't sensitively tuned, you're likely to lose the data in the noise, particularly since the signals coming through are often more subtle than the content we collect through our sensory awareness. They're energetic more than tactile, intuitively perceived more than recorded. Most of the time, we're gathering data from the world through our five senses. With the information that's being transmitted on higher frequencies, we're channeling this material that can't be physically grasped. It defies logic, in the same way an electron can be in two places at one time. This energy is of great worth, though so few people are open enough to hold it. So how do we pick up on a signal that can neither be heard nor defined? The answer is not to look for it, nor do we attempt to predict or analyze it, or analyze our way into it. Instead, we create an open space that allows it, a space so free of the normal overpacked condition of our minds that it functions as a vacuum, drawing down the idea that the universe is making available. And he says at the end of this, artists who are able to create great works through their lives manage to preserve this childlike quality, practicing a way of being that allows you to see the world through uncorrupted, innocent eyes can free you to act in concert with the universe's timetable. And I really do think that's what Leonardo's doing. He has just created a space that is so open to idea and so open to not worrying about failing and making mistakes and, messing something up, right? As a kid, you don't care. You're just going for it. You're receptive to everything that's happening around you. You're not forcing it. I think that's the key.
The key line from that I wrote down as you're reading that, intuitively received rather than recorded.
Yes.
And so I think about the amount of the degree to which one's channel has to be open to receive this information. And our doubt episode that you referenced before, I talked about this a lot in the Jack Whitten episode, Notes from the Woodshed. He writes about this a tremendous amount in that incredible book. But how if we start from a place of knowing, if we start from a place of, okay, here's all the things I know, right? All that is doing is clogging up our antenna. Yep. If you think back to the days when there were, satellite antennas and dishes, if there was a storm or if there was whatever leaves that got built up on the receiver, it wouldn't receive the information. You would not get a signal. And we are very similar in that regard. So when I hear Leonardo talk about that to me just reinforces that truth of, when he talks about not knowing and not needing to know, that to me is a necessary component to being an elite receiver. And thinking about it like, I don't know Morse code, for example, but if for some reason there was a message coming through in Morse code, the information's in there, right? And so the process would be, well, I suppose I could look it up and figure out, what it says fairly easily. But if we're talking about this in terms of ideas and inspiration and the things that flow through us, the process is the decoding. That's where the decoding happens. Mm-hmm. It happens by tactily, right? Touching things and moving things around and being in motion, and sitting with the work and listening as well. It's funny, this clip, it opened with Leonardo sitting in his studio chair and just sitting with the work, doing the thing that we all do, right? the cock of the head, trying to orient ourselves, trying to see things from a slightly different perspective. But that's what it is. It's receiving, it's listening, and it is working in service of what we're receiving and working that out, through the work in front of us.
When he even takes that to a whole nother length by travel.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Right. That's part of his antenna that he figured out at a very young age, when I think somebody said, you got to go to Europe. And he's like, how the heck do I get to Europe? I don't have any money. I think he might have been 18 years old, and he went to Europe for his first trip and had no money, stayed in hostels, and really didn't eat much, but he was seeing all this art and just all these things were just coming in, right? His antenna was up. And so all these things, he's just, they're just flying in all over. And so he took that as, oh man, this needs to be a part of my practice. So for him, like traveling and putting himself in these cradles of civilization that are just full of memory and full of story, China, Machu Picchu, Goree Island, like he really believes that all of these things will naturally manifest in his art. And I can say from seeing it, yes.
Let's hear him describe that in his words. We got a great quote for that.
If you're going to be a receiver or like an antenna, receiving information, right? It's not a bad idea to place yourself in these places so that you can benefit from, from ground up what's coming into you. And then you get to the studio and these things, they're going to come out. But you don't have to call it. You don't have to say, I'm making work about this specifically, because that would cage and imprison the whole idea of how these things have to come out naturally. So you just get out of the way, and it's like I said, it could be 3 years, many years later.
Get out of the way.
Get out of the way. Get out of the way.
That's probably one of my favorite things. I tell a lot of my artists that have gone through a mentorship program, maybe you just need to put a note up outside your studio, the door. It says, get out of the way. Yeah. Get out of my way. You know what I mean? Because that's probably one of the most difficult things for us as artists, is to stay out of our own way in the studio.
That reminds me of a Philip Guston quote that we've got on our ever-growing list of episodes. We will be doing a Guston episode, but he talks about when I'm going to paraphrase here, obviously, but when you start, you're in the room, and the galleries and the curators and the dealers are in the room, and then after a while they leave, and when it's really working, you leave too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
I think about that a lot. How many ego deaths do I need to die in order to really, transcend to that point of of truly getting out of the way? That will, of course, be a lifelong pursuit. But when a genius like Drew, this is just a little tip for the kids. When a genius says it's not a bad idea, listen. Right. People with true wisdom and knowledge generally don't say, here's exactly what you need to do.
It's not a bad idea is a great precursor to put your antenna all the way up.
When someone like that says it's not a bad idea, it means it's a really good fucking idea. Yeah. And you should probably pay really close attention to whatever comes next. Yeah.
Well, and he's going to come out. He's an alchemist.
Yeah.
I mean, really. I think that's something that's so beautiful, is he's able to kind of get out of the way and let the process happen.
Yes.
Being an alchemist, right? So he's taking these competing elements and combining elements and letting the actual elements start to create this process within everything that ends up driving him to put it together after it's done its work.
You don't have to call on it. You don't have to say, I'm making work about this specifically, because that would cage and imprison the whole idea. These things have to come out naturally. So you get out of the way. And that just goes back to what you're saying before about whether it be travel, whether it be, you're so great at reminding us to just go look at more art, go talk to more artists, right? But the more we fill ourselves up, the more we'll be there to be called upon when it's ready to come out. And it'll come out however it's supposed to, as opposed to, no, this is the idea that I manufactured, that I've engineered in advance. No thanks. That's not for me.
Yep.
All right. I've got to include this one, Ty, and you'll know pretty quickly why.
Mm-hmm. What were you making it for?
I'm an addict. What a question. I mean, you look around, you can see it's a serious addiction. It's like crack. So I am definitely the crack addict of art.
So that was a CBS This Morning piece, and Ty, you can include the follow-up question, which had nothing to do with what he just said. The interviewer was like, I don't know what to do with that. Next question. Listen, this is a 3-minute piece. We don't have time to unpack what you just threw at me. He's Drew says that in multiple talks, describes himself as the crack addict of art. It's interesting. As an addict in recovery, in the traditional definition of the word, I can tell you that what I discovered in art is there are a lot of similarities. Yeah, art's a lot like crack, as a matter of fact. Specifically, there are some brief highs and with a lot of struggle, with a lot of pain. And I think I mentioned this before. I didn't really tie it back to the addiction piece, but I don't know, but I'd be curious to hear your experience with this as well. We're chasing those highs. We're chasing those yes moments where the clouds part and it's just better than what we could have imagined. Because that's, when those moments when something comes together just so, that's what we're chasing. And it is a chase. I mean, that's what addicts do. We chase the next high, and we'll do pretty much anything to get that next high. And my experience with actual drugs, that gets pretty ugly for me very quickly. But when you put it in the context of an artist in the studio, it's that constant striving. And, I think about it as a belief and just a knowledge, like that's the hope that keeps me going in those down times when things aren't working and I haven't had a hit for a while. Yeah. Of like, it's coming. The next, just keep working, just keep doing the next thing. The next right thing will lead to that next yes aha moment. And then every time we get one of those, however frequent or infrequent they may be at different periods of our process, that's the fuel that keeps me going. But how does that resonate with you as a non-addict?
The drive isn't to have the same high you had before. Yeah. The drive is the next big high, the one that's better than the last one. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's the push. It's like, how do I get there? How do I get there? And so, but I think what Drew has nailed, and so many great artists like his mentor, Jack Whitten, who was one of his professors at Cooper Union, that became a father figure and a mentor. And also he shared studios with for a long time as well in the beginning. That's something that Whitten had too. And I'm sure that Whitten completely passed that down to Leonardo in that relationship of, if your channel is really small, then that high or that feeling is going to be very small and you're not going to achieve what you're really wanting. But if that channel is really wide and open and you're receptive to trying anything and everything and taking ideas from here and there and gathering all these things and being willing to absolutely fail miserably at it to get there, you're going to get there. You're probably going to get there. Now, time is of essence in that. Patient, slow, unbridled, frustrating time is all a part of that. And I can guarantee you, because we've read Whitten, so we know exactly what Jack would say, is because we've read him like over a year's period of time in Notes from the Woodshed. Nothing's working. I can't do it. What's wrong? Something. Right. I can't find it, blah, blah, blah. And then he says, I scrapped it all. Yeah. And went this way. And then a few months later, I did it. I found it. I discovered it. You know what I mean? And so, that's hard. That's a hard realization. And it has taken, Leonardo Drew is in his young 60s. And I think
63, 62.
Yeah, I would say he would say, I'm still discovering it. Yeah. Yeah. And I would be empty without the feeling of still discovering it.
7 years, right? 7 years from him making that decision, that it took him to make what he decided was a finished, successful piece. Number 8 was the title of that first piece, and he jokes about that in one of the talks. That obviously, if the first one that I did was number 8, obviously there were at least seven before that came before it, and they're all in there. It's that absolute commitment to the work and to the chase, with the hope and the belief that there will be something on the other side.
One of my favorite things about Drew, I don't think we really get into this. So I hope that you guys really dig into it when you listen to any of these interviews and more interviews from Leonardo, is he doesn't title his work. He leaves that up to the viewer. And now I'm not that artist. I'm totally different. I believe I want my work to have context in the titles. So oftentimes my titles are paragraphs long or 4 or 5 sentences
in your titles.
Use all the words. And I think that's for me also as a poet. And a lot of my work is based on poetry and different things that I've written and memories. I do want some context in there. Now it's the viewer's choice if they want to read the title card first or look at the work first. That's up to them.
Yeah.
But for Leonardo, he numbers his pieces like Clifford Still.
Just like Clifford.
He says,
that's right.
No, the work is what you make of it, not what I make of it. But if you are wrapped up within the work, what I have in it, somewhere will be baked in. But you're also now baking more into it than I could have ever created.
Yes.
And I love that he even calls out critics and curators as lazy for trying to put into it what they really think in articles and in things that cause the audience to already have a view of what the work may be without really seeing it. And he calls that lazy on their part a lot of times. But that's the thing that I love about his work too. It's not small. Mm-hmm. So you're not walking up to a tiny little piece. Now I've seen some Drew pieces. I actually was at Ruby City in San Antonio, which is the collection of the artist Linda Pace and her museum of her collection in San Antonio. It's a wonderful collection. And I walked around the corner and I saw this 2-dimensional with some 3-dimensional objects, square piece on a wall, I think 74 by 74 inches. And I went, this looks really familiar. There's something about this piece. And so I got up really close to it and I was like, is this a Whitten? Was the first thing I thought. Is this a Jack Whitten piece? And it was a Leonardo Drew piece from 1997. And it's glass and paint and wood. But I could see in it where he's going.
Yeah. So
you think of that whole journey through, and I think it's titled, it's number 59. Mm-hmm. All of his work numbered. So that's number 59. I think he's at like 920 or something at this point, or 960. I don't know what he's at.
Yeah.
But you can see this journey now when I stand in front of these pieces and I'm going, you're literally in it. Like you can't not be in it. So that causes you, like one of Louise Bourgeois' rooms, to have to go inside this artist and inside this artist's thoughts and mind. But now you're having to decipher what it's doing to you being surrounded by it and who this artist is, what they may be. I don't know. It's just, as a title person, I love that his work is not titled.
Well, it's an experience, right? I mean, you you mentioned Clifford Still. I'm going to be back in Denver in a couple of weeks, so I'll be taking another 4th or 5th visit through the Clifford Still Museum, which I'm super excited for. But his work, of course, as well is incredibly large scale. It's an experience. It's to be taken in, and so the lack of information about what it may or may not be about is it's perfect. It's exactly the way that it's supposed to be and the way the artist intended it. I want to share a quote where he talks about, what do you say to people who ask what the work's about?
Yeah.
And this is his response.
This is what I'm saying. Do not do this. That's me pushing a bale of cotton to Jack Whitten's studio. Jack was my teacher at Cooper Union. And he had a studio on Lisbon Art, which is here. I was pushing 30 blocks from 26th Street. So that's Canal Street will be the next block. I'm already here on Broadway, headed towards Canal. And so Jack was on Lisbon Art, which is right after Canal. So I would push these bales of cotton. This guy was smart enough, because it's a political statement right there, you know? But this guy took that photo. If I was smart enough, I would have set it up. But I did not set that up. But he saw that I was doing this every other day, pushing this bale of cotton. That you guys saw the cotton piece in it earlier? That's how it got done. That very piece is that one. And but let's get to that studio shot. That's it. Come on. Ridiculous. It's like, come on, you thinking? I mean, like, about what? I mean, it's like, what a question. That's the self-explanatory. You know, it's like, okay, this has to go, that's behind you also needing attention. And you're like, oh, God, what's next? You know, it's like, but that's the truth. That's the photo, that's the truth, you know.
Yeah. Thinking? So the question was, what are you thinking about, when you're making his work? And then for context here, it shows some photos of him in the studio, just completely immersed and surrounded by materials and any number of the 7 crying babies that he talks about. But it's just, his response is it's so incredible. Like, what a question. It's self-explanatory. It's like, okay, this has to go here. And do you need attention? It's attending to each of those babies. But I love that response. We're close here, which is a couple more quotes that speak to the way that Drew thinks about the work and just kind of his philosophy around the creative process. This is from that Art 21 video that we mentioned before.
We're all reaching. I'm not talking just about artists, but we all are reaching. As I'm creating, I know that I have the opportunity, whatever I feel or know, I make into material.
We're all reaching, Ty. Not just with art. We're all reaching.
Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think, that's human nature. I think we were all born to reach and strive for something and reach for something. Whatever you think that might be, that's part of what this journey is. And I think that's something that I completely take into my art practice, is that I want to reflect that same reach and that same strive and push towards something, whether that is existence or supernatural or spiritual that you may think. Like, I do think we're innately created for that. And that's something that I 100% take into my practice. And I really do think that Leonardo does as well. And I think when you have that side in you of that constant reaching and searching for something, that should be reflected in your work, which means your work should not stop growing. It should not stop changing, and it should not stop evolving. It should be in this constant transformation, right? This catalyst of the story of a cocoon, right? The caterpillar blooming into a butterfly. I talked about this with my artist this last Saturday, and you have something that can't do very much. In the beginning, the caterpillar on a branch doesn't go very far, can't do too much. Can't move very fast, not going to see very many things. Then through this process, it now transforms into something over a period of time. It's not overnight. It takes some time for that cocoon to build and for it to change and metamorphosize inside it. That's Leonardo's 7 years, right? And then all of a sudden, that cocoon opens and he's able to go and do whatever he wants anywhere. And I just think that's a beautiful thing. That's how we should be in our studios.
I have a thought on that, but I'm going to share one more quote, and then we'll share our final thoughts.
As I'm moving closer and closer to answering questions, at the same time, I'm moving further away from the answers. So all I have to do at this point is continue to sort of place my body in the act of attempting to know.
I think that's a great quote for us to end on.
Absolutely.
So, we like to try and at times give people a whatever tangible takeaway. I think for me, it would be, are you asking those questions? Are you spending time, you, our dear listener, not you, Ty Nathan Clark, but you too, Ty TNC.
Okay.
Are you seeking? Are you reaching? Are you receiving? Ask that question in the first person. Am I seeking? Am I reaching? Am I receiving? Spending time, you and I are both pretty dedicated journalers and writers and processing our experience in some attempt, to make sense of things. But that's a really good introspective question to bring into that practice, whatever that looks like for you. But it's a big challenge, like we talked about before. Am I too comfortable? When I'm feeling uncomfortable, while that doesn't change the discomfort, and that is not an enjoyable feeling, oftentimes embracing that discomfort as part of the journey to get from where we're at to where we're meant to be. Your thoughts?
Yeah. And I think if you are starting to feel really uncomfortable and stuck, switch it up. Do something different for a while.
Tie your hands behind your back.
Yeah, tie your hands behind your back. Like, do something totally random. Go make some found object pieces. If you're a painter, if you're an abstract painter, do a still life. Like set up a still life in your studio and go back to the basics. Like just do something different for a little bit. Sometimes we do need to just switch it up and do something different. And I think that's not leaving the road you're on. That's just assisting yourself with getting some breaths of fresh air to bring into your space in your studio. And I think Leonardo's a great example of that. He mastered something and was very good at it. Could have been very successful in it. And he went, no. I want to do this. No. I want to go this way. I don't want to have my hands tied anymore. Mm-hmm. I want to just keep rolling and rolling and rolling. And so, I would say, hey, you just got to enter new ideas and things regularly, not just once a year, not just twice a year. While you're working on what you're working on, be messing around with something else in the studio, because that quote is just so great. As I'm moving closer and closer to answering questions, which he's throwing out a lot of questions regularly. You'll hear that when you listen to him. At the same time, I'm moving further and further away from the answers.
Yes.
Because he's so receptive to new ideas and new thoughts and new things. They're always coming in. So each time stuff starts to get solved, he gets further away from solving it because he's constantly entering in new things. And I would say, if you can take anything from this episode, take that into your studio practice. That way those walls stay open and they don't get closer and closer and closer and start closing you in. So if you have the opportunity to go to a museum because you live in a city where there are museums, get online, go to their archive, see what's in their collection, search for Leonardo Drew, see if they have a piece. If you're traveling to another city that has museums, do a little search. Who has Leonardo Drews? I'm telling you, you're going to be blown away. Even if you're like, I don't even like installation art. You're going to be blown away. I don't care. You need to go see his work somehow. If not, just get online, do some searches. You're going to lose it. He's incredible.
Look at more art, listen to more artists, don't take our word for it. I mean, who
are we?
But honestly, I mean, all of the, so we'll share all of all of our sources in the show notes here, but the Art 21 video is phenomenal. A lot of our quotes were taken from that. The Carrie Scott episode,
Carrie Scott's podcast
on her podcast scene is phenomenal. And there's a lot of other great ones out there as well, many of which we reference, but just again, one of the reoccurring themes of the podcast is just, listen, like discover, try to really understand and just get a little bit of that excitement, that energy, that juice that comes from really understanding how not just art itself, but how artists think about their art, how they approach, their practice. I mean, I'll be able to float a good couple months just on all the research that we've done from this and having this conversation as well.
Yes.
It's incredible. So with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for hanging out. Check us out on YouTube if you want to see. Ty does an amazing job of the edit. So if you're not going to do your own homework, Ty will include some great clips of different pieces of Leonardo working, as well as a lot of his incredible finished work as well. So with that, join us next time for another episode of Just Made Art.
Bye.